I got a chance to work at the beginning of Skywalker Sound with the father of Skywalker Sound, Ben Burtt. And I remember the first time I was really flipped and so impressed by something Ben did with Raiders.
The Jovito's on here. Poison is still fresh, 3 days.
All of a sudden, there was a strange, otherworldly creature, almost a Star Wars creature. I don't know where he got it. And it made that entire jungle scene so friggin' alien. And when I first heard that, I said, this is going to be a great adventure. It's going to be a great adventure in sound.
I had a long conversation with Steve over the phone about the nature of the whole film.
You'll come back here for the chair.
I think I said to him something about the fact, well, does the hero's hat stay on all the time? And he said, yes, it does. And then I understood what kind of movie we were making. You know, if the hat never comes off, even in a fist fight, then we're in that realm of the classic Saturday afternoon adventure movie. We knew that Indy had a whip. And of course, we could have pulled the whip sounds from a library, since obviously there's been whips recorded in the past, but no, we wanted to do it ourselves. Actually, what happened was that Gary Summers, who was recording sound effects with me, spent a day on the set, and the result of that was that Harrison had some time and came over to our editing room, and Gary and Harrison stood out back in the parking lot, and Harrison tried to show Gary how to crack the whip. It was a little too noisy to record it. So later, I took Gary Summers out to quiet locations, and Gary did a lot of cracking of the whip. And we did it in different environments, in the trees, out in the middle of the field. And we built up a library of whip cracks, which was the basis for Indy's sound. The gunshot can just be a pop or a click, depending on where you record it, because it's just a sudden, very brief, loud noise, like a hand clap. The actual Indiana Jones gunshot was a .30-30 Winchester rifle that was recorded. We did a lot of different gunshots. We probably recorded, a few hundred different guns in different locations. Of course, we would pull the best from that, but the Indiana Jones gunshot wasn't, processed or really manufactured in any way in the studio. It was pretty much exactly as it is in the live recording we did. The giant boulder was a tricky sound to invent because it had to have weight, but it also had to accelerate and move very fast, and finding something that big and getting it to move fast was hard. We had several different sessions where we went out and tried to stage a boulder sound, and they were not successful. But on one of the last days, we were coming back from the location, and we were on a steep hill, and we were in this little Honda Civic station wagon on a gravel road on this mountain, and we were just coasting down the hill without the motor running, and we realized the car sounded really interesting. Well, we might have the sound here, so I hung out the back and put a microphone near the back tire of the station wagon, and we just coasted down this road, and as the car accelerated, it gave a sense of gathering speed, and that ended up being really the basis for the giant boulder. The body blows and punches in the Indiana Jones films was another area that we worked hard and tried to come up with a new sound. Although many of the sounds really, I think, were based on what we had heard in older films, the classic sound effects, but I wanted to remake them and do them in stereo and to exaggerate them probably in some ways, because everything about Indiana Jones was somewhat of a comic book. We tried a lot of different experiments. We beat on pieces of meat. We broke chicken bones. Probably we had our most success with a pile of leather jackets and a few baseball gloves, and making a loose pile of this material and then whacking it with a baseball bat. And out of that came the whole library of hits. in the Indiana Jones films. There were a lot of elements that went into the Well of the Souls. Most principally was the snakes. And we started out recording some real snakes, but snakes don't really vocalize all that much. And part of the element of the snakes is really their movement over each other. And we've had a lot of luck over the years with cheese casserole. My wife makes a cheese casserole, and when it's in the dish and you just run your fingers through it, it gives a real oily, mushy sound. And if you record that and build it up in several layers, you can make a nice sense of slimy snakes moving around the room. That was augmented with some wet sponges being moved around. In fact, I think it was on top of a skateboard, on the rubber place on top of the skateboard where you stand. Certainly the most supernatural part of the film was the end sequence where they open the ark and the spirits flow out and destroy everyone. So quite a bit of sound went into that. It's obviously the kind of sequence where there's nothing to record on the set at all. It's all going to be manufactured later.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And the sequence begins with the lid being slid off the ark, and I experimented with a few different things, but I found that sliding the toilet tank cover in my own home toilet was perfectly sufficient, and if I recorded that in an echoey bathroom, it seemed to fit, although in a rather undignified way, the character of the ark itself. The ark itself, the humming, the deep undulating tones that went with it, were generated by a synthesizer. It's rare that I use an electronic synthesizer, but this was one case where I found the kind of sound I wanted. I had an old ARP 2600, which is what I used to do R2-D2. And by reprogramming it, I was able to produce some wavering low-frequency tones, which became the basic sound. Once the ark is opened and the spirits start flowing around, there's quite a bit of work there taking animal screams and some human vocalizations, as well as dolphin cries, which we had recorded, and sea lions. And I ran those through a vocoder, which keeps a sense of the original sound, but adds a musical tone that follows the same pattern as the voice. So it gave it an otherworldly quality. All the sparking and beams were from a set of recordings I made of the old gear that was used in the Frankenstein movies. There was a fabulous variety of electronic devices and lightning generators and things of that sort. And out of that came all the sounds for the beams and things. Each indie film was a new challenge because they covered so much ground. Temple of Doom suddenly had us running all around the world. So we really knew that we needed to just record a lot of new things. And they did actually go out and record while they were on location in Sri Lanka, some animals and birds that were native to the place. And that gave us a good start. The sound effects for the minecart chase came from many sources. I started, as I usually do, by analyzing the actual sound. I mean, can we record some minecars somewhere? And that led to the possibility that maybe a roller coaster would be a good thing to record. And after a while, we actually set up a very interesting recording event, which was at Disneyland. Gary Summers and I were allowed to go in there at night when no one was there and ride all the different roller coaster rides and record them without any music turned on or anything of that sort. A very strange night was spent there gathering some very high-speed, rolling cars, and then they would screech around corners, and they would clatter as they went up and down. that was the beginning of a lot of the minecart chase effects. We had to augment it with a lot of things, but principally the sounds done at Disneyland was what gave us a variety of clangs and echoey, rattling sounds, which, when pieced together in a controlled fashion, gave us the sense of the minecart chase. And the minecart chase was a unique opportunity for us to do a high-energy chase and to sustain it really with principally sound effects. And it kind of exhausted everyone on the whole crew to do that, myself included. But along comes Last Crusade, and as usual, things are amplified even more. And we have there a motorcycle chase, which goes to an airplane chase, which goes to a horse and tank chase, and kind of all in the same breath.
Oh, rats.
We always have sequences which involve a lot of dangerous creatures surrounding us. In Last Crusade, we're surrounded by rats. And like most movie animals, they don't make any noise on the set. So I needed to make up sounds for what would be thousands and thousands of rats. And oddly enough, I ended up using chickens. I had a group of irritated chickens all clucking at once. And I put them on a keyboard, the sound on a keyboard, and then played the very highest notes, which made the chickens go way up in pitch. And it made a funny kind of chirpy, well, it sounded like rats to me, and I guess everybody else believed it. But those rats were really chickens. In the climax of the film, not only do we have the whole temple moving and mechanisms and stones turning, but we have an earthquake. And a lot of those first sounds you hear of the floor splitting are really just rubbing on a balloon. An inflated balloon with you're getting that squawking sound. Also, a lot of the stones falling and avalanche effects there came about because we spent a day once gathering stones and boulders and rocks around Skywalker Ranch and hauled them all the way up to the top of a big rock outcropping, and then just shoved the whole thing off the cliff and let them all pour down the front of the stone, and we recorded that, and it's become quite useful over the years to have that sound for all of our earthquakes. My association with Indiana Jones has been a very pleasant one for me, creatively and for my career. I shared an Oscar on Raiders of the Lost Ark with Richard Anderson for our sound effects editing, and Last Crusade, which kind of capped the trilogy for me. I got another Oscar along with Richard Hims, and that was, once again, a vote of confidence for our work. And I look back on those as, obviously high points in terms of that part of my career.